And welcome. How is everybody doing today? Hope everybody is doing well. My name is Jamie. You guys likely know me as Mystic Mac DFS from my time over in Reddit in those DFS sports community over there. Know me as Mystic Mac DFS from my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Mystic Mac DFS, where I do have exclusive DFS content. I have some data sets, goes over some of my article weekly plays, things that we'll kind of touch over in a bit. But for now, I hope everyone is doing well. What we're going to do, we're going to go into some quarterbacks for week 2 today, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to touch base on 3 quarterbacks that I'm looking into as of right now. Later on this evening, I will be posting a running back video, which will have 3 to 4, probably actually for running backs, just maybe 2 to 3 running backs that I'm looking into this week. And then we'll do a wide receiver one after that, wide receiver / tight end, I should say, where I will have 3 to 4, probably just 3 wide receivers that I'm kind of looking into this week. Make it clear that these are not going to be the only players I play, obviously, and the fact that I will may not end up on maybe all 3 quarterbacks that I mentioned. Hard to imagine I will not end up on any of the running backs or wide receivers. But as far as the quarterbacks, I do only make approximately 4 to 6 lineups a week. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to register all my contests tonight and kind of really dive deep into that aspect of whether what I want to do 4 or 6. And generally, I just use 2 or 3 tight ends quarterbacks, since I'm not a scripter and I don't play 50 or 150 lineups. But that's kind of the gist of it for today. So we're going to go over some advanced metrics, go over some basic metrics. As you can see on the screen in front of you, this is my week 1 player dashboards that I do have for all of my Patreons over there. Included with that, I do have some like head-to-head matchups. We do got some week 1 stats for each team, just some basic information here. Nothing too crazy, but I feel like this is really informative and it really helps you get an edge, and it makes everything be right in front of you. So it's a nice little addition to the package, as well as getting obviously the articles, my plays, my thoughts. I posted a usage podcast where I went over some of those advanced metrics, snaps, etc., and I referenced a few important ones that I felt like were relative to this slate that is already posted over there. But let's get into these quarterbacks. So, first guy I want to talk about, we'll talk about Cardale Jones. Okay? So, the reason I like Cardale Jones, first off, it's important to note that the DC Defenders do have the second highest implied team total on the slate with 26.5, as you can see, or 26.25, or 26.5, excuse me. Now that I'm looking at it, I do need to go in and actually give this a quick refresh, because I just checked Bet Online and they did update those odds. Nothing too crazy. I do think that the Defenders are now 7-point favorites, but it's nothing too drastic. This is going to be changing almost every day, depending on the money that's coming in through Vegas. So, but always make sure that you're checking those lines every single day, and I will always be refreshing it here on this that we'll get to after this video. But like I said, second highest team total. But most importantly, one thing that I really do like about Cardale Jones is that he actually led all quarterbacks in play action percentage last week. He had a 32% play action rate, which second highest was 21%. So we like that. There's been a lot of research to show, thanks to guys like Warren Sharp and a lot of those other guys out there, that have shown that being able to run a play action, regardless of if you're able to establish the run or not, is shown to be make your passing offense much more efficient. So when we're able to see Cardale Jones at a 32% rate, which is extremely nice to see, we can that's going to be something we're going to have a lot of interest in, right? Not to mention that this guy had 7 rush attempts for about 27 yards. That's going to be a nice floor. He's not a guy that's going to run a ton and rack up a ton of yards like Jordan Ta'amu, unless he can really break a big one, right? Because Cardale Jones, he's a thicker guy. Um, he's kind of like that Big Ben Roethlisberger type, where, yeah, he's still absolutely mobile, and he's going to be able to get you 5 to 6 rushing attempts likely a game. But he's not that Lamar Jackson, right? That's going to be able to bust out, or even like I said, Jordan Ta'amu type of player that's really going to be able to get you, 60, 70 yards outside of breaking a big one. But that's still a nice floor that we like with him. Another good aspect with Cardale Jones, and it's not something that I have on this sheet, obviously, but his deep passes, right? So he threw 4 deep passes, which is a decent amount. He only threw the ball 26 times, which was the least amount out of all quarterbacks on the slate, right? So what we can look at is he threw it at a 14% clip. Threw deep passes at a 14% clip. And when I mean deep passes, these go 15 yards or more down the field. And I think that's interesting to note that he did go 4 for 4 on all of those deep passes. So he's been extremely efficient so far on those deep passes. So that's another reason that we kind of like him. And again, like I said, he only had 26 pass attempts, which I think maybe if people were just, the casual fan is just looking through and they can see that, wow, he only threw 26 times, maybe they didn't watch the game, maybe they aren't familiar with what happened, and they didn't know that he wasn't forced to throw. So they might think that, wow, maybe he's not going to throw a bunch, and he's one of the more expensive quarterbacks on the slate, which I think is going to be obviously wrong. We can see here that he had 11.2 yards per attempt, which is very solid. It's obviously the most on the slate. Would imagine that would come down, but still, it's very solid. Another reason that I do like him is that I think the public's perception might be higher on New York's defense than it should be, right? I think that New York made Tampa Bay look really inferior last week. And at this point in the season, right, we don't know if that's really because of Tampa Bay or if that is because of New York's defense, right? Time will tell, but regardless, Cardale Jones is going to be a guy we're going to want to play a lot this year. He's just, in my opinion, one of the, if not the best quarterback in the league. And he's on a team that I think is probably the best team in the league. And I'm going to want a lot of pieces or a lot of parts to go with Cardale Jones because he has a really solid wide receiver group, which we'll kind of talk about in a later video. But that's another reason that we do like Cardale Jones. Next guy we'll talk about, PJ Walker. Obviously, this isn't no surprise, right? Really, these first 2 guys you mentioned aren't a big surprise. You're probably thinking, wow, Cardale Jones, PJ Walker, 2 probably of the more popular quarterbacks. But I think it's important to note that we don't need to get weird in quarterbacks. If you're familiar with NFL DFS, you know that you just play whatever quarterback you want, and you worry about getting contrarian in other positions like wide receiver, right? So I'm not too concerned about that. PJ Walker is going to be a guy that we're going to want to roster throughout the course of the season. He was my favorite quarterback last week, like I mentioned. And that is because of this offense. June Jones is going to throw the ball a ton. I'm pretty sure that he was second in the league so far with a pass rate at 69%. And he had a 90% early down pass rate in the first half. So on first and second down, he passed the ball 90% of the time. So that's a ton of passing. And some of you might be asking, why don't we count third downs into this? Well, third downs is a reactionary down, right? So third downs is based on the situation at hand. The play that's drawn up on third down is based upon the situation that's in front of us, right? So if it's 3rd and 12, you're likely not going to run the ball. You're forced to kind of pass the ball. So that's the reason why we kind of focus on those early downs and early down success rates and early down pass rates and things like that. And it is also, I think, important to note that PJ Walker actually had Pro Football Focus's highest run rate. He had a 79.4 run grade for PFF, which is the highest out of all quarterbacks on the slate. And he only rushed the ball 3 times for 26 yards. So I think that is interesting to note for sure. Another interesting tidbit for him is that his deep passes. So this is going to be a team that's going to be chucking the ball down the field. He had 11 deep pass attempts. That's a 29% rate. So in 29% of his passes, he was throwing the ball deep. That's just going to be something we're going to have a lot of interest in all season, specifically for those wide receivers that we might be talking about later as well. I don't need to go too in-depth with P.J. Walker. Like I said, he's a guy that's going to be pretty popular, highest price quarterback on the slate, and for good reason. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is Matt McGloin. I think he might go a little bit underowned. I'm not too for sure. This shows that he is a 5-point dog, but he's actually a 7-point dog in the updated odds that will be updated on this sheet after this video. But he only had 29 pass attempts last week, which again, like Cardale Jones, I think maybe people might look at and think that this team isn't going to pass a lot, and that's just not the case. They just weren't forced to. I believe that Kevin Gilbride is going to want to throw the ball still a good amount of times. He wasn't very efficient, but to be honest, that's not a big concern for me at this point. I still think that he's going to be very effective. He threw the ball deep 5 times. He had 5 deep passes, and he had a 17% rate. So on 17% of his passes, they were deep balls. That's going to be something that we're going to have interest in. And he's likely playing behind against this DC team that is projected to win by a touchdown at this point. That's going to be a guy we have interest in. But most importantly for me, I love his wide receivers. This is going to be a team that I'm going to have a lot of interest in. Specifically this game, I'm going to be bringing it back when I'm playing Cardale Jones with a lot of these wide receivers. And I don't want to get too in-depth on that because I know for sure there's a wide receiver on this team that we're going to want to mention that may or may not get overlooked. I'm not quite sure how the ownership is really going to pay out. But like I said, I really, really, really like his wide receivers. So that's going to be something we're going to get into later. It's also important to note that I think Matt McGloin did have the second highest PFF passing grade on the slate, which was actually higher than Philip Walker. Cardale Jones obviously had the first, and Matt McGloin did have the second with 69.5, which I think is interesting. So if PFF is weighing in pretty well, that's another note, a positive note for Matt McGloin. So he's a guy I think that you need to kind of focus in on. I think that's, I think that could be important. I think DC did allow, as we can see over here, allowed the most passing yards because Brandon Silvers in that Seattle offense was kind of forced to throw. Maybe that's the same way here, right? With 3 touchdowns and 317 yards is what Brandon Silvers put up, and Brandon Silvers is a much inferior quarterback to Matt McGloin, in my opinion, and PFF agrees with me. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to want to look at. Okay, so that's going to kind of do it. I want to make this kind of video short. I didn't really want to go past 10 minutes, so we're going to get a running back video out here later this evening, a wide receiver video hopefully out tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, and then I'm going to be able to get that final look out where we're going to build some lineups together, kind of go through some of my favorite plays overall, and just kind of talk through roster construction and get a final look. All right? So that's going to do it for now. I will see you guys later. I hope everyone has a good day. Bye.